Hey, hello, welcome to Pastor's Perspective, sponsored by Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa. My name is Brian Perez, and we are here for the last time this month to answer your questions about the Bible, the Christian faith, just about anything that's on your mind. That's right. If you do not call in today with your question, you're going to have to wait until next month to find out what it is that's been troubling you. Now, of course, next month is tomorrow, so I didn't say in a month. I said next month, which is 9 hours from now or so. Anyway, enough of that. My name is Brian Perez. Brian Broderson and Bobby Conway are here to answer your questions. So give the fellas a call at 888-564-6173, 888-564-6173. That number is good until 4 p.m. Pacific time today, and we would love to chat with you. Again, 888-564-6173. Pastor Brian, how are you, sir?
Well, I'm doing great, but I'm a little bit envious of Bobby's drink that we see coming in on the Bobby cam there. What is that thing? It looks like an iced coffee milkshake thing or something.
This is 4 shots of espresso with some almond milk, cinnamon, cardamom.
Bobby,
and
last week
mixed up.
You shared a little bit with me about feeling kind of anxious lately and a little sort of nervous. I just have the diagnosis for the root of the problem. You cannot do 4 shots
Scale back, huh?
espresso. My goodness.
And it's 4 shots of espresso at 6 p.m. his time.
Yes.
It's 6 o'clock over there.
Yeah.
So not judging, bro,
That's
but,
right.
I don't know.
Well,
6 a.m. maybe.
And, the little ironic twist here is that I have a headache because I have gone off of caffeine. So you're hyper-caffeinated and I am decaffeinated.
But I thought you did that a while
That's
ago.
the problem. You're not supposed to get off it.
Yeah, well, I did. I did it a while ago, and I did it for about 10 days, and I was fine. And then, I just kind of slipped off the wagon, as they say, and next thing I knew, I was groveling in the gutter with a cappuccino in my hand. It's the way it goes. Well, when you're traveling, coffee just kind of works with the travel schedule. So anyway, I'm back home. I'm not traveling, and I'm going to try to go for it for the rest of the year. No coffee the rest of the year.
Really? 2 whole months?
2 whole months. Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
You don't want to at least try it next month?
Well, I'll see how I do this month. But
Next month meaning tomorrow.
I'm kind of thinking I need to work on a few health issues. Nothing major, but there's a couple things I need to get some discipline in, and this is one of them. So figured 2 full months left in the year should give me a good stretch. So I told Cheryl, I said, okay, Thanksgiving Day, Christmas Day, and my birthday are going to be my days to splurge, but the rest of it, I'm gonna try to be disciplined. So
nice.
And the great thing is I'm not traveling. See, traveling is the downfall for all of my efforts to maintain any kind of a healthy regime. Mm-hmm. So once I get out of the U.S. space and I land in a place where there's all kinds of fascinating chocolate and different kinds of desserts and different flavors of ice cream and stuff, I just completely collapse under the pressure, under the temptation.
Now, in case anyone's wondering, we had our Glow outreach at Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa on Saturday, and I saw Pastor Brian a couple of times, and not once was he eating a Butterfinger. So congratulations on that. At least I didn't see you.
I had no...
Wow.
Not only did I have no Butterfingers, I had no candy.
At all?
No candy at all.
Wow. Good for
and
you.
Today is Halloween. I keep forgetting it's Halloween. Just seems like October 31st to me. But and then people are reminding me and all of the sweets and everything. But yeah, I've succeeded today.
And that's why you're not in costume today.
I am. I'm Pastor Brian costume in the end of fall when it's 85 degrees. Shorts, flip-flops, and a polo shirt. But I did want to talk to Bobby about long before Halloween, as we know it, there was another great event in history on this day in the year 1517. Bobby, what was that event?
Yeah, that took place in Wittenberg at the Castle Church, where Martin Luther posted his 95 Theses, which were the contentions that he had with the Roman Catholic Church at the time. And one of the big sweeping contentions was the sale of indulgences in order to evacuate loved ones out of purgatory. And so that was one of the big issues, and he paid a heavy price for that. He was asked to eventually renounce his faith at the Diet of Worms, and he would stand strong and said that he was captive to his conscience unless it could be proven otherwise from Scripture. He cannot recant, and he asked God to help him. And it looked like he might have been put to death, and he was escaped in the night and taken away to the Castle Church in Wartburg, where he spent quite a bit of time in disguise under a pseudonym. And there he was as basically a knight named George hanging out there at the Castle Church. And eventually he would come out and he would have translated Erasmus' Greek New Testament text into the German language, and God would raise him up in victory, and the Protestant Reformation was off to the races.
Yeah, that's it. Reformation Day is the day that many are celebrating today, and that's, a major turning point in history for sure, when basically the Bible was in some ways rediscovered on kind of a global level, right? The Bible had been kind of kept under lock and key by the Roman Church for centuries, and the Eastern churches didn't really help because they didn't do much with the Bible either. But it was Luther that God used to bring the Bible back to the common people. That was his objective, and that's what he accomplished when he translated the Scriptures into the common vernacular of the German people. And while that was going on in Germany with Luther, a man named William Tyndale was doing the same thing over in England with the Bible into English. So it was a very extraordinary period of time, really. So many books have been written on the Reformation, and there's so much of the world today that is really only understood in the context of the Reformation. So a massive, massive historical event that would have global ramifications. So
yeah. And even when you think about what was going on, you take Tyndale or you take Luther, not as much with Calvin and Geneva, but Jan Hus over in Prague. You think about the teeth that they had to have in the face of such opposition, and that gospel grit. And I feel like there is a message in that. While we go about, doing the trick-or-treating as Christians, we can remember that there was great boldness. And at times that boldness, sure, was arrogant, but we need to find our voice again. And there's some reforming to do in the church today. And we need more courage like a Luther had. We need to, it'll never be easier, what I told Image Church on Sunday, it'll never be easier to speak up than it is in this very moment. And unfortunately, my fear is while everybody else is out of the closet, the church is still stuck in it. And we have got to figure out a way to find our voice and to not be ashamed of the gospel and to not believe the marketing lies that we hate just because we share truth. That is just branding that is used. And in the same way, it's like even with the new seat that was taken with Mike Johnson. Now he's being called by some an extremist. So apparently, you're an extremist if you're pro-life and you're pro-marriage between a man and a woman. Mm-hmm. And you can just see the language that's coming our way, and we have to be willing to counter that, or we're going to be in a position where it's going to be a lot more difficult. And I'm fearful that the church will finally find its voice. When they do, they're going to pay a much heavier price and be extremely persecuted as a result. There is a spirit of resistance against truth right now that is very powerful.
Yeah, true. But on the other side of that, I do think that this is a time of revealing. It's a time of exposing what's really going on in the hearts of a lot of people, and it centers around the crisis in Israel and the situation, not simply with Israel now as a nation, but with Jews around the world, where you have mobs of people calling for not just like a ceasefire. They're calling for death to the Jews. So but it's the interesting thing is a lot of people who were wearing this mask of tolerance and this mask of acceptance and diversity, that mask had just been ripped right off their faces, and it's pretty clear what they stand for now. So I think it's interesting, Bobby, that if you look at the left, and when I say the left, I'm talking philosophically left,
progressive,
and then of course it translates itself into all kinds of other things, politics and so forth. But when you look at the left, you could see all of a sudden there really is a kind of a clear division now within the left between radical extreme left and people who are like, well, wait, I'm progressive, but I'm not that. I'm not genocidal. I'm not murderous. So I think there's some interesting. The veil is being lifted, So and I'm saying this in the context of what you were saying about the new Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, and some of the flack that he's already getting. But he's getting it from people that, of course, anybody who's not like them gets that kind of treatment from them. But I wonder if now people are going to be able to say, oh, this is kind of the same source, the same source that's calling for Jews to be eradicated is the same source that's also basically saying that men can get pregnant and have babies and all of the crazy stuff that's been going on in the culture. It's all a big package, and now we're just seeing like, oh, this is all in the same basket, So all I'm saying is, I think hopefully maybe some more, and I think it's already happening. I mean, people like Bill Maher, people like Anderson Cooper, cultural people are, people who have a voice, who have an audience, who have influence, who would lean heavily left generally, are all of a sudden going, wait a second, this isn't what we were signing up for. So maybe the Lord is doing what he would often do back in the Old Testament period. He would take the enemies of Israel would come, and they would all end up fighting each other instead of fighting Israel. Maybe that's analogous to what we're seeing.
Yeah, it would be nice to see kind of a cleaning up politically in our universities as well. Thankfully, even with our president right now, that they're working on, dealing with the anti-Semitism going on and talking about what they're going to do to address that in our culture.
Yeah.
And that's going to create problems for him within his own party, as you're saying, with some people.
Yeah.
But I do feel like, when you're calling someone like Mike Johnson, an extremist, the reality is holding to traditional family views. That's was pretty normal in the culture of America until 2015. And the idea of even pro-life, was pretty normal until, Roe v. Wade in 1973, though there was stuff going on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So to act like that's the extreme position, it's really extreme to say that men can, be pregnant.
Yeah.
It's really extreme to say that there's over 100 genders. It's really extreme to take a baby out of its mother's womb in the 9th month of pregnancy and, basically abort it.
Yeah.
In such a gruesome fashion. So I would say, that hopefully you're right. Maybe we'll clean some of this stuff up and we'll get back to the center a little bit. And that's what we could hope for. And maybe I'm living in a little bit of anxiety and fear because, I don't know, maybe it just prepares me in case that's what happens and it's a bad method, but I fall into it.
Yeah, I heard somebody say the other day, while Westerners were arguing about pronouns, the militant Muslims were doing their legwork and preparing to storm, Western capitals, which they've done over the past, few weeks. So, yeah, who knows? I mean, hopefully somebody will wake up at some point and say, we got a problem here. And it's not a pronoun problem. It's a way bigger problem than that.
For sure.
Yeah. And, the other thing I said on Sunday too, I was like, when people think about the church and us being oppressors, and I've tried to reflect on that, I'm thinking, boy, I don't really perceive myself as an oppressor. I share what I believe, but I'm okay if somebody doesn't agree with me.
Yeah.
I'm willing to even have a conversation and hear people's views. And I'm thinking, what would Christianity offer our culture? Well, it would give kids, a secure bond to be raised in a Christian home. It would advocate being honest in your workplace and working hard for your money. It would be for forgiving people when they offend you. It would be for recognizing your own weakness so that you are careful to tailor it, that you don't hurt others. It would be about loving your enemies. It would be about helping people who are hurting. It would be about helping the poor. It would be about, seeing that justice is served. It would be about allowing various ideas at the conversation table without forcing our idea down anyone's throat. What are people so scared of? That doesn't sound oppressive. Mm-hmm. What sounds oppressive is the people that want to say, no, I'm an extremist, and if I hold to this kind of a viewpoint, you're canceled, you don't have a voice. Yeah. That seems oppressive.
Yeah. Yep, I think so.
All right. Great conversations today on Pastor's Perspective, and we haven't even gone to the phones yet. So thankfully, we archive all of our programs on Facebook, YouTube, and Spotify in case you want to hear any portion again or just want to share it with friends or take notes, whatever the case might be. So check that out. Also follow us on our new YouTube channel at Pastor's Perspective. We're also on TikTok and Instagram, and we would love to hear from you. All right. 888-564-6173 is our number, and Brian Broderson and Bobby Conway here to answer your questions. We're going to begin with Belinda in Crestline, California. Hello, Belinda. Welcome to the program.
Hi, guys. Thank you so much for being there.
You're welcome.
My question is about, I have a 20-year-old daughter who just recently went to the other side of the continent. On her way there, about 5 months ago, started living her life and accepted Jesus. And very excited about it. Met a guy who just became a believer also. And they were excited together, kind of mixing up that excitement with something they were very unaware of, brand new believers. I guess 3 months into it, went to the courthouse. Got married because they were reading the Bible, learning it, and didn't want to commit fornication. It hasn't even been a month since they got married, and they realized they didn't wait on the Lord. They realized that they didn't know anything about each other, and they feel stuck. They feel ashamed. They feel like they made a mistake, and they don't know what to do about it. Wish that they could go back to being friends and and learning more about the Lord together as friends, and she really needs some guidance. And personally, I'm her mom, and I've never had a marriage, so I am the wrong person to ask. I know that the world would say immediately annulment, they're babies, they don't know what they're doing, and as a mom, that's how I feel, but I know that's not biblical. And wedding counseling, marriage counseling would be the answer, probably before they got married, but now that they're married, it hasn't even been married a month yet, and they are at a loss, and they feel like they're just learning more about the Lord. They don't know what to do now that they know they weren't listening to the Lord. Yeah.
Okay. Brian, what would you say?
Well, I guess the first thing that I would wonder about, Belinda, is do they have a church that they
yes.
feel like this is their home? Okay.
Yeah, they just moved there, so they've only, it's all new. They do belong to a church. They are on the worship team. They go there all the time, and that's how they're growing more.
Yeah.
Realizing they didn't even know each other.
Yeah. Yeah. This isn't the first time this has happened to somebody. Not to make light of it, but these things do happen. And I think that the first bit of counsel I would give is for them to get with their church leadership and let them know that they're really struggling. They're newly married and they wonder if they made a mistake, and just lay out all the facts, and ask for some guidance, and ask for some help, and ask for some counsel. And I don't think that this is an insurmountable problem. I think if they both genuinely love Jesus, like it sounds like they do, then the Lord's able to work through this stuff. And I think I don't think there's any reason why they should be hopeless about it. I think they should be hopeful that God's going to bring them through. Lots of people get married and don't know each other, and they don't even know they don't know each other until they get married. Then they're like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't really know this about you." And then, but you can't just say, "Oh, well, now that I know this, I don't want to be married anymore." You have to say, "Okay, well, this is one of those things that God's going to give me grace and wisdom and love and all of those things." And you work on it together. I mean, it sounds like the way you're describing them, it sounds like they like each other. It sounds like they, in some ways, it sounds like they're compatible. So again, I'm preaching to the choir, so to speak. I mean, they're not listening. So I would say that's the step. Get them to go to their church leaders and get into some counseling with the leadership in their church.
They might be listening if Mom shares today's program with them.
Well, they could, yeah. So that's my encouragement. It's don't give up. Keep moving forward.
Bobby Conway, what say you?
Well, I'm definitely sympathetic to what you're feeling and what these kids are feeling. I can understand that, they're probably living with oh my goodness, what just happened? We didn't think through this. And at the same token, you think about what Pastor Brian just said. There's lots of people that have got married before and they didn't know each other, and maybe they thought they did. Or there have been arranged marriages where the couple didn't even want to get married and they figured it out. The Bible says in Proverbs 20:25, it is a trap for a person to dedicate something rashly, only later to consider his vows. And that's a powerful verse right there. Ecclesiastes gets into this, where it talks, I think in chapter 5, about, the vows that we make before the Lord. And so there is this sense where, okay, they've made this commitment, but now they want to break the commitment. And part of what it means to have integrity and virtue is to be a person of our word. And when we regret our word, or when our word hurts, or when the way ahead of us seems difficult, and we just feel like we can go back on our word, and when we do go back on our word, that weakens something in our humanness. It tears down the fabric of integrity. And so what I would suggest is that even though they made this decision, God is still sovereign. God can still work through this. And I would encourage them to identify their fears, to on paper, to identify their regrets, and then take those fears and take those regrets and confess those to the Lord and ask the Lord to help them to find a way forward. In other words, don't quit before the miracle happens. I mean, if you felt strong enough to say I do 30 days ago, what happened to make you feel like you can say I don't any longer 30 days later? And so that would be the encouragement, to stay in the ring, because it gives them an opportunity to trust a sovereign God to meet them, because we all make decisions that we regret. But when we're willing to be faithful because the decision that we made, you know, how many pregnant women have got pregnant and they wanted to get an abortion, but they were faithful and God blessed them with a child that they grew to love so deeply. There's lots of decisions that we make in life. And so I would say, invite them up to a place of courage to walk and trust the Lord to meet them in this, to see what he can do.
Brian, do you have a verse there?
Yeah, I have a great passage that came to my mind after during the time Bobby was talking about Psalm 15. It says this in verse 1. It says, Lord, the question, who may dwell in your sacred tent, and who may live on your holy mountain? And then it goes on and lists the character and the behavior of those persons. The one whose walk is blameless, who does what is righteous, who speaks the truth from their heart. And then down in verse 4, this is a great part. This is the part I want to get to. In verse 4, it says, who keeps an oath even when it hurts and does not change their mind. Then the final verse, whoever does these things will never be shaken. So that's just a little passage to kind of, affirm what both Bobby and I have been saying, that you made an oath and it's going to hurt to keep it, but this is the kind of person that God really honors, and this is the person whose character the Lord commends.
Now, that's not to say that if there was like unfaithfulness in the marriage, or if there's physical abuse or things like that, that's a different story.
Yeah, that's a totally different story. We're going in the assumption that apart from just feeling like, oh no, we made a mistake, that's the reason they're thinking maybe they shouldn't be married, not because there's any of those other things.
Right. Bobby Conway.
Yeah, well, you think about just the sacred, and I can understand, again, it's not, I think, Belinda, you said, boy, my feelings are saying this, but this is kind of what I know the Bible would say. And I can get that for you, that your feelings would be that way. And that's so much of what it means to be faithful too, living above our feelings. The Jewish community believed so much in the power of the vow, which is obviously our heritage, that in a wedding ceremony, they would take a bowl and they would cut the bowl in half, and the bride and groom would come out in bare feet, and they would walk between the two halves of flesh with their feet stepping into the pool of blood, and they would walk a figure 8 around the halves of flesh as if to signify, God, if I'm not faithful to this covenant I'm making before you, then do so unto me. That's how powerful their word was to them, that they would do such a thing.
All right, we are out of time for this half of the program. We're going to take a little break, and then we'll be back with more of your questions at 888-564-6173. I'm Brian Perez, here with Brian Broderson from Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa, and Bobby Conway here as well. He's the pastor of Image Church in Charlotte, North Carolina. By the way, you can see archives of Bobby's messages, including the one from this past Sunday, on his website, imagechurch.live. We'll be back in a little bit. 888-564-6173. This is Pastor's Perspective. Welcome back. Thank you so much for listening today on the radio, or maybe you're listening on a podcast, or maybe you're watching us on Facebook or YouTube on this Friday. No, Tuesday, October 31st. What was I thinking? We're here. It's what am I thinking? I don't know.
What were you thinking?
What was I thinking? I don't know. Maybe I can't even say that I wish it was Friday, because it's only Tuesday. I mean, that'd be pretty bad if I'm already looking forward to the weekend. Anyway, 888-564-6173 is our number. Brian Perez is my name. Brian Broderson and Bobby Conway are here to answer your questions. 888-564-6173 is our number. And let's go now to Mason. Welcome to Pastor's Perspective, Mason.
Hi. Thank you for having me and letting me answer a question.
You bet, Mason. You sound young. Are you going trick-or-treating tonight?
No, we're going to Light Fest, a thing at my church.
Oh, nice. Very cool. Yeah, we just had ours at our church a few days ago, so it'll be fun for you to hang out there. What kind of question do you have for us today?
The question I have for you is, when the meteor hit the Earth and all the dinosaurs went extinct, were people on the Earth at that time?
How old are you, Mason?
11.
11 years old. Great question. Pastor Brian, what do you tell Mason?
Okay, well, a couple of things. First of all, Mason, there's the idea that meteors hit the Earth, and that's what caused the dinosaurs to go extinct. That's a theory, but it's not necessarily a fact. So we don't know, exactly what happened with the dinosaurs and extinction. But dinosaurs and humans, according to the Bible, dinosaurs and humans lived side by side. Dinosaurs, like all other animals, were created on the sixth day, land animals, and the fish were created on the fifth day, the sea animals. And then humans were created on the sixth day as well. So you always would have humans and all of the various animals living simultaneously. Again, when the dinosaurs or how they went extinct, the flood could be an explanation for the majority of them, but we would think that there were dinosaurs that were brought into the ark, probably, baby ones, and came through that. But then, like many other species that we find in the fossil record, like saber-toothed tigers and woolly mammoths and things like that, there was a point where they did become extinct, and we just don't know. Some people think there was an ice age and that it happened through the ice age. There's definitely parts of the planet where it was obvious that there was some intense freezing, because you can find some of those creatures that have been encased in ice for a long, long time. So, but anyway, that's kind of a long answer to your question. But that's, Bobby, do you have any anything you want to add to that or take away?
Yeah, I mean, Han Solo was one of these figures that we know of that was encased in ice, and
It's exactly what I was thinking as I was describing.
yes.
Oh, Bobby. Mason, does this
Good
help
question,
you?
young man?
Mason, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there.
Yeah, does that help you?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for calling. We hope to hear from you again soon.
And, there's some really good Answers in Genesis and Institute for Creation Research. Both of them have great stuff on the dinosaurs and, and stuff on the level, too, of somebody who's a bit younger. So I would say that Mason, if he wants to get more specific information on that, he might visit the Institute for Creation Research. What is it? ICR.org. And they have a kids answers and videos and things. I am absolutely sure they've got something there on that.
Yep. And Answers in Genesis, you can check them out at answersingenesis.org. And they also have a kids section as well. All right, Mason, thanks for calling. 888-564-6173. Let's talk to Laura in Fontana with a question on soul ties. Hi there, Laura.
Hello, pastors. Thank you so much for taking my call.
You're welcome.
So my question is, I know soul ties aren't biblical, but how would I go about telling my friend that I was listening to Focus on the Family, and it was a message from Patricia Ashley, and I was pretty excited about it. I didn't fully listen to it, and I sent it to her, and then as soon as I did, she started talking about soul ties, and I was just like, oh, I didn't think about that. So now, and it's funny because out of the whole message, she specified that specifically, like, oh, yeah, soul ties. So I was just like, no, not that.
Bobby, what do you know about soul ties?
The Bible doesn't use the term soul ties, but it does say, like in 1 Corinthians chapter 6, do you not know that he who unites himself with a prostitute is one with her in body? So similarly, when people are having sex outside of marriage, they're becoming one with people, and they're making ties, so to speak. And so that's something to be cautious of. The Bible says in 1 Samuel 18:1, the soul of Jonathan was knit to the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own soul. So there was this knitting of souls that can happen. And so I think that when we understand maybe what God's getting at is there are these connections. There's sexual connections that can tie people together. There's friendship connections that can tie people together. And that's why this stuff hurts so bad when you get jerked out of it. And so we want to make sure that we connect, with, the right relationships and we're guarded, and that we realize that relationships have consequences. In fact, the Bible tells us in Proverbs chapter 1, my son, if sinners entice you, do not give in to them, do not go along with them, do not set foot on their paths. So in other words, it's offering caution by describing certain types of unions that we need to be aware of. So in that way, I would say we can't underestimate the power of what happens when we build a relationship with somebody in the wrong way, and how it can impact us if it's a sexual relationship or if it's a deeply emotional relationship, and even if we get, cross-pollinated into somebody that has a different belief system, we can see that affecting our own worldview. And so we have to be very careful about how we build the relationships around us.
Any thoughts from you, Brian?
Well, is soul tie is it like a similar idea to a soul mate? Is that what the idea is, Bobby? Do you know?
I don't know exactly if there's a one-size-fits-all usage of it.
Yeah.
I do think that it's used that way for sure. I feel like, God's given us a soul tie with our wives, of course.
Yeah.
But then there's that caution about, oh, hey, there's other soul ties.
Yeah.
And I can see biblical precedent for that. And that's where maybe I would encourage our caller to maybe think about maybe some of the things that I was
and sometimes on the, in a marital situation, I've heard this many times, and this is coming from a person who's wanting to get out of a marriage and get into another relationship because I just don't feel like I've really met my soulmate in my wife or husband. And I think this other person is really my soulmate.
Right.
So let's go back to who's our caller?
Laura.
Laura, are we getting close to what you're thinking about there?
Yeah, but with the question, it was like a soul tie between a mother and a child.
Okay. Oh, and what's the negative thing about that?
No, it was just stating how in a marriage that, from what she was talking about, that the reason why they weren't having like a good marriage, apart from other things, is that he still had an attachment to his mom, a soul tie.
Oh.
So he had, he had to.
So he was unable to leave and cleave, basically.
Yes. Yeah, in a sense, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's a real thing, but I don't, I guess somebody decided that a soul tie was a good way to define what they see happening in those situations. But I don't, again, like Bobby originally said, it's not a biblical term, but you can see those behaviors working out in people's lives for sure.
Bobby?
Yeah, and it is true that when the two become one flesh in the context of marriage, that means that they're no longer striving to be dependent on their mom and dad for physical, emotional, spiritual, financial support. That doesn't mean that mom and dad might not come along and, offer emotional encouragement or spiritual direction or financial help. But it does mean that, the couple is to look to each other. And so what can happen sometimes, it's what Robert Lewis talks about in his men's fraternity curriculum. You can have an overly bonded with mother wound. And the overly bonded with mother wound happens when the son is still not cleaving to his wife, and his umbilical cord needs to be cut from mom because mom's still calling all the shots about where the holidays are going to be spent. Mom's still running down, her son's wife to him. Mom's in competition with the wife. And this causes all sorts of problems that then what happens is if the husband doesn't put up some spatial boundaries, then that's going to create problems as well. And so that can be really challenging. I mean, we had this happen with, my wife's parents, early on where, Christmas would happen and it would be like we'd have our gifts and then they would come in like Santa Claus and just bring in 10 times the amount of gifts that we were giving. And it was like, hey, you know what? You had your opportunity as mom and dad here. This is our chance to have some fun. Let's not just spoil the heck out of them. It also happens in the context when if you don't deal with it before kids come, then the mom, in this situation, because you're bringing up a mom, the mom might disregard the boundaries. And then when the boundaries are disregarded over and over again, then that can cause the wife to shut down. It can cause marital tension. And so this stuff's really important. There's a lot of married men who need to clip the umbilical cord, but then mom needs to realize that in the clipping of the umbilical cord, she doesn't need to create guilt on him and make him feel shame and then use all kinds of, stuff like, how could you do this to me? I've always loved you. Why are you rejecting me in this way? Instead, we need to realize as mom and dads that that's our job, to raise our kids, to launch them into this world, to be responsible spouses someday. And that means that we have to step back. And so we step back and we allow them to figure their relationship out. And if they want our advice, they'll ask for it. And you know what I find too is the more we step back, the more they'll step closer. The more we step in, the more they'll step away.
Laura, hope that helps you. Thanks for calling us today here on Pastor's Perspective. Diane, I want to go to you next, but first I want to take this question that was sent in online. It's from Carlos. It seems like mostly a prayer request, but there's something else involved here. Carlos writes, "Hi, pastors. I am against separation and divorce in relationships. All relationships, including mine, have their ups and downs with problems. Fighting and arguing mostly is what takes place with my marriage. My wife of 13 years wants to separate, while I'm more inclined to sit down and talk things over and come to a resolution. Nothing is really working at the moment because there is so much anger and resentment. Please pray for my wife and me as we navigate through this difficult time." So Carlos is asking for prayer for his marriage, but at the same time, it seems like there's something else here where he's saying he's totally against separation and divorce. Maybe he just wants the two of them to talk these things out. But might this be a chance for a counselor or somebody to get involved? What do you guys think?
I think, there are definitely times when you need a third party. You need somebody that can listen and somebody that can speak, because, a person can get so impassioned about a particular thing or so convinced of the rightness of their view. They just can't even possibly see that they might have it wrong, especially from their spouse, who maybe it's an issue that they're debating or struggling with. So I think for somebody, I've had this many, many times, you sit in a room with two people and, you can get a pretty good picture of what's going on. And you can then weigh in and say to the wife, okay, here's what I see going on with you. And then to the husband, hey, but, look, this is what's happening here. And if people are open and teachable and humble and they want to do what's right and be reconciled, then they're going to listen to that and take that and say, oh, wow, I didn't see that, but I think you're right now. And then, progress can be made. But, I mean, sometimes if it's just, well, no, we're just going to work it out. Sometimes that's not going to work.
Carlos, thank you for sending in your question using the form on the Pastor's Perspective page of our flagship radio station's website, kwave.com. All right, go back to the phones now. Diane, as promised, calling in from Long Beach. Tell us about this dream you had, Diane.
Hi there. Thank you for taking my call. So I have been really seeking the Lord wholeheartedly and just reading, and I'm going to different churches trying to find a home church. And I had a dream on Saturday night, and it scared me. I had a dream about the rapture, and I'm reading a lot about it. And I felt that it all happened. I saw a white horse in the sky, and people were going up into heaven, and I was going too. And I was holding on to a friend, I guess, and I remember praising the Lord, and I was happy, and then it stopped, and I didn't go all the way up. And then I woke up, and I was so scared, and I didn't know what to think. And on Sunday, I just felt so overwhelmed. I just couldn't shake it, and I didn't know what to do or think about it. So I don't know what to think about that. I don't know if I'm being attacked because what I'm doing, or I don't know.
Yeah. Well, a couple of things. Number one, dreams are very unreliable sources, and we should never put our trust in a dream exclusively or fully. Even if it's a great dream, I think we have to test and see now, was this from the Lord? So I've been a Christian for decades. I had one dream before I became a Christian that I believe was the Lord because it was instrumental in me coming to faith. And then I think I maybe had one other dream in the 40 plus years I've been walking with the Lord that was the Lord. So I've had a gazillion dreams that were not at all spiritually significant. So I don't put a whole lot of stock in dreams. Now, your particular dream, it sounds like you're a Christian, correct?
I believe she is.
Is that right, Diane? You've received Jesus, right?
Yes. I did.
You're
yes,
following
I have.
him. Okay. So this is the ground you need to stand on. You've received Jesus. Jesus said, "Whoever comes to me, I will never turn them away." And you are now safe and secure in Him. And the rapture is your destiny, because that's the destiny of all who trust in Jesus at the time when that event occurs. So having a dream that you didn't make it or whatever doesn't change the reality that you belong to the Lord, and therefore, if you happen to be living on the earth at the time of that event, you will participate in that event. And that's what you need to stand on, not the dream that you had.
Bobby?
Okay.
Yeah, Diane, you said something as well, that you've been reading a lot about the rapture. And so I would say that when that's the case, things that we're engaged in, and in particular, if there is a lot of excitement or if there's a lot of fear around stuff that we're thinking about, it can show up in our dream. And then it can show up in our dream in a tweaked way. It can also happen, for example, if you experience betrayal. And while you're working through the process of wanting to forgive, but you feel pain in a deep way, well, that pain can show up and look like revenge in your dreams. But that doesn't mean we wake up and that's how we're to act out. So all that to say, sometimes when we expose ourselves to studies around topics of the future and stuff like this, you can find yourself in a dream setting because there's all kinds of other things that are going on a subconscious level. But we always got to go back and measure it against Scripture.
Diane, thanks for calling us today from Long Beach at 888-564-6173, 888-564-6173. Did you want to add something else, Brian?
Nope.
Okay. Here's a question that we got on Facebook. It's from Anthony in San Fernando, California. And it kind of goes along with our topic that we just were discussing. Anthony writes, "Hey, pastors, just wanted to know about something I was reading in Daniel. In chapter 7, verse 25, it says that the beast, perhaps the Antichrist, will oppress God's people for a time, times, and half a time. This seems like the Great Tribulation. So why is it said that the church will not be in the tribulation?" Brian?
Well, that's an easy one to answer because when Daniel was written, of course, there was no church The church didn't exist until the new covenant that Jesus came and brought. So Daniel's not speaking about the church. He's speaking about God's people, who he would be part of God's people, the people of Israel. So that's a specific reference to Israel at that time.
All right. Any thoughts from you, Bobby?
No, that was great.
All right, Anthony, thanks for sending in that question. One more that was sent in online, this one from Valentina, again tying in with the same topic. I'm a little confused by who Jesus will take with him when he comes. During the tribulation, will all Christians who've been baptized go to heaven, or will we all be on earth for 7 years being tortured by the devil? Who are these 144,000 who will go to heaven? There are billions of people on this earth. How are only 144,000 going to make it? If this is the case, what do Christians need to do to become part of these 144,000? And I'd hate to be like number 144,001, barely missing it. But Bobby, what's the truth about the 144,000?
Yeah, well, the Jehovah's Witnesses have taken that literally to believe that there really are only 144,000, but that's just not the case. It's debated on who the 144,000 are. Are these Jewish evangelists? Does this represent the church during the tribulation time? Those who are saved during the tribulation will enter into the millennial kingdom when Jesus comes back during his second coming, and they will have that hope of knowing that they're going to be with him forever and ever. And so it's much bigger than 144,000. That's just a group that has got a very special, significant role. And I know that lots of people are comfortable with that being Jewish evangelists. Others, it represents the church. You can kind of wade through that and figure out what you want to believe there. But at the end of the day, that's just a cultic doctrine that takes that literally and then writes off heaven for everybody else that's not in that class.
Valentina had another end times question, and we'll close with this because we've only got about a minute left. She says, I've been seeing a lot of videos lately about the Great Reset and how they will be implementing digital currency, which means that the mark of the beast may be coming very soon. When that time comes, the Bible says that without the mark, no one will be able to buy or sell. What will Christians like myself do? I don't want to get the mark of the beast, but if I refuse to get the mark, how can I buy food for my family? What will happen to all the Christians who refuse to get the mark of the beast? Will we all be killed, or will God give his people a way out? Brian, what do you tell her?
I would say that, some Christians, and I happen to be one of them, believe that the rapture will take place before the mark of the beast is implemented. So the people who are today believing in Jesus will be taken out of the world. There will be people that will turn to Jesus during that time, and the warnings are for them not to receive the mark. And that might mean death for them, but it is, it's preferable to die and be with Jesus than to live and receive the mark and be forever separated from him, which would be the consequences of receiving the mark.
Valentina, thank you for sending in your questions online using the form on the Pastor's Perspective page on our flagship radio station's website, kwave.com. We are out of time. Tony and everyone else that we couldn't get to today, please call us back next month. Well, tomorrow. We will be here tomorrow from 3 to 4 p.m. Pacific time. God bless you guys. Have a great evening. For Brian and Bobby, I'm Brian, and Pastor's Perspective was sponsored by Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa.